the beginning of a prophecy. 2,500 years ago, a man walked through the dusty streets of Athens. The sun cast its golden light on the marble temples, the voices of merchants filled the air, and in the public squares, citizens debated politics, philosophy, and war. Among them, one man stood apart. He was not a leader, not a soldier, nor a wealthy merchant. He was a simple man, dressed in a worn-out tunic, with a gaze so piercing that it unsettled those around him. His name was Socrates, and he had seen the future. Not a mystical prophecy, not a fate written by the gods, but something far more real, far more terrifying. He foresaw the collapse of democracy, not just in Athens, but in every democracy that would follow. He understood that the freedom to vote, the power to choose leaders, concealed a subtle, insidious, almost invisible trap. And the people, in their naivete, never realized the poison running through the foundations of their own system. That prophecy went unheard, and today, 2,500 years later, we are living through exactly what he predicted. But to understand the present, we must go back in time. We must return to Athens. Democracy was born with a fatal flaw. Athens, 5th century BCE, the city that first introduced a revolutionary concept to the world, democracy. For the first time in history, the fate of a people was not decided by a king, a dictator, or a god. The people governed themselves. Every citizen had the right and the duty to participate in collective decision-making, a vision that today seems normal, even inevitable. But at the time, it was almost subversive. Yet, within this apparent perfection, there was a crack, a fatal flaw that would lead to its destruction. Socrates saw it before anyone else. He observed how people voted, how assemblies were swayed by emotional speeches, by easy promises, by leaders who knew how to sell illusions better than anyone else. And he realized that the problem was not democracy itself. The problem was who was voting and how they were voting. One day, Socrates proposed a thought experiment. He asked his fellow citizens, if you were sick, whom would you trust? A trained doctor who prescribes bitter but necessary medicine? Or a sweet shop owner who promises instant relief with sugar and honey? Naturally, everyone answered that they would trust the doctor. Then Socrates asked, and yet in democracy, you always choose the sweet shop owner. And then you are surprised when you fall ill. The triumph of demagogues. Socrates knew that the problem with democracy was the people themselves, not because they were evil, not because they were stupid, but because they were vulnerable. Vulnerable to well-crafted words, to dreams sold as reality, to golden illusions presented by those who knew that truth was too bitter to swallow. And so, in democratic Athens, a new kind of ruler emerged. They were called demagogues, charismatic, persuasive men who did not rule with wisdom, but with seduction. One of them was named Cleon, a masterful orator, capable of stirring crowds with fiery speeches full of anger and impossible promises. He did not tell the truth. He told people what they wanted to hear, and they loved him for it. Under his leadership, Athens embarked on reckless wars, made destructive decisions, and pushed itself beyond the limits of reason. And in the end, it collapsed. The city that once echoed with his fiery speeches, the people who once cheered his every word one by one, they turned to silence. His wars drained Athens, his promises turned to ashes, and his name, once roared with admiration, became a whisper of regret. Power, built on deception, never lasts. And so, like the empire he led into ruin, Cleon fell, swallowed by the very chaos he created. Athenian democracy was not destroyed by a foreign army. It was destroyed from within, and Socrates watched it happen with his own eyes. If the story ended here, it would be nothing more than an old legend, a tale from the past. But the problem is that history has not ended. Today, the world is full of new Cleons, new demagogues, new voices selling sweets instead of medicine, and people follow them, just as they did back then. The only difference is that now the system is much more sophisticated, much more powerful. Social media, news outlets, politicians, and advertising are not just sources of information. They are carefully engineered machines designed to shape how you see the world, what you believe, and even how you feel. Every image you scroll past, every headline you read, every speech you listen to has been crafted with a purpose often not to inform, but to steer your emotions in a specific direction. They do not want you to analyze, to pause, to reflect. They want you to react. Outrage spreads faster than reason. Fear is more profitable than understanding. And division is a more powerful tool than unity. The modern world does not encourage independent thought. It thrives on your emotional impulses. And the worst part? Most people never even realize they are being controlled. You are constantly bombarded with information crafted to provoke rage, fear, and instant hope. You are trained to keep choosing the sweet shop owner again and again, without even realizing it. The methods have changed, but the manipulation remains the same. And democracy, it is repeating exactly the same mistakes Athens made, because Socrates knew that if the people are not educated, they do not choose wisely. They choose what makes them feel good in the moment. And so, democracy becomes a weapon in the hands of those who can manipulate the emotions of the masses. Can you escape this system? Is there a way out? Socrates suggested one, but it cost him his life. He argued that democracy is a skill, not an automatic right. He believed that not everyone should vote, only those who had prepared themselves to do so, just as one must train to drive a car or perform surgery. He believed that without education, without political awareness, without the ability to think independently, democracy was nothing more than an illusion. But challenging this belief meant confronting the very foundations of power. His warning was not just ignored, it was seen as dangerous. Truth, when inconvenient, is often silenced rather than debated. Today, the question remains: are we doomed to repeat the same mistakes, or are we finally ready to listen to what Socrates tried to teach us?